What if the moment you think your life is ending is the moment your real life finally begins? That was the question Sarah Winters never imagined she would face as she stood alone on the desolate station platform, her breath turning white in the bitter December air. The wide prairie stretched out in every direction, dark and endless, the kind of place where hope seemed to wither under the weight of the cold. She clutched her carpet bag close, trying to steady her trembling hands. All she had left of her dreams was a single letter in her pocket, a letter that had shattered her future with one cruel sentence. But destiny was already shifting on the horizon. The rhythmic clatter of hooves broke through the winter silence, slow and steady, growing louder by the second. Sarah's tired eyes lifted, and through the swirling frost she saw a black carriage approaching. Its brass lantern glowed warm in the darkness, throwing dancing shadows across the snow-covered boards of the platform. The carriage stopped in front of her. The door opened. A tall man stepped down with the quiet authority of someone used to being obeyed. His long black coat whispered against the ground as he moved. The icy wind tousled his dark hair, but it was his eyes that struck her most, steady, observant, and marked with a kind of kindness she had nearly forgotten existed. He removed his hat. "Ma'am, James Montgomery." His voice was deep, steady, and warm in a way that cut through the cold. Sarah drew herself up, holding on to whatever dignity she still possessed, after hours alone on that platform. Sarah Winters. She managed. James took in her situation with one sweeping glance that saw everything. The red-rimmed eyes, the trembling hands, the bag that was far too small to hold a woman's entire life. "I don't believe the next train is coming before morning," he said, "and that's if it manages through this weather." She nodded, unable to trust her voice. "Where are you headed, Miss Winters?" The question was gentle, but it sliced her open. She swallowed hard, feeling the painful lump in her throat. "I know where now," she whispered. The letter seemed to burn in her pocket. 6 months. 6 months she had written to the Harrison family. Kind words, hopeful words, careful plans. 6 months of dreaming she might finally have a place to belong. But when she stepped off the train, instead of a welcoming family, they left her a single folded note. "Our son has made other arrangements. Your services will not be needed." James watched her silently as she explained, a shadow darkening his expression. "The Harristons," he said at last. "This is the 3rd time this year they've done this. They summon a bride, take her savings, and send her away with nothing." His jaw tightened, a flicker of anger flashing across his face before he mastered it again. Then he looked at her. Really looked. And Sarah felt seen in a way she hadn't in months. "My ranch is 10 miles north," he said. "Mrs. Bennett, my housekeeper, keeps the guest rooms ready. If you'd accept shelter tonight, I'd consider it a personal favor." A stranger's offer. A dangerous offer, by every rule of propriety she'd been raised with. But the wind cut like knives through her thin coat, and loneliness pressed on her like a weight she could no longer bear. "You're very kind, Mr. Montgomery," she whispered. "I would be grateful." He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that softened his strong features. "The kindness is in letting me help." He lifted her carpetbag without effort and offered his arm. When she stepped into his carriage, warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. Plush velvet lined the seats, and soft fur covered the footrest. Her reflection in the window startled her, pale, exhausted, hair escaping its pins. A woman at the end of her rope. But James Montgomery didn't look at her like she was broken. The carriage lurched forward, crunching over snow as the platform lantern faded behind them. Sarah felt something inside her loosen, the tight grip of fear, the weight of disappointment, the ache of being abandoned. James spoke as they rode, his voice low and even. "The ranch has been in my family for 3 generations. We run cattle, breed horses, and keep orchards when the weather is kind." He paused. "You said you were a teacher?" Sarah nodded. "In Vermont, for 6 years." A spark lit his eyes. "The town has been desperate for a proper teacher. Most folks learn their letters from their mothers, if at all." Hope flickered in her chest. Small, fragile, but real. The land opened before them as they crested a ridge, miles of snowy pasture, split by fences and a silver creek winding through the moonlight. In the distance, warm lights glowed from a large house. "Silver Creek Ranch," James said with quiet pride. "Welcome home, at least for tonight." Home. The word settled into her heart like a promise. When they reached the house, Mrs. Bennet stood waiting in the doorway, hands on her hips, gray hair pinned neatly back. Her eyes softened when she saw Sarah's weary face. "Well then," the housekeeper said, "let's get you fed and warm, child. James, you bring her bag. I'll take care of the rest." Inside, the ranch house was all glowing lamps, polished wood, and the scent of stew simmering on the stove. Sarah's knees nearly buckled from the warmth. James lingered in the doorway, snowflakes melting in his dark hair as he watched her, not with pity, but with something gentler, something that made her heart flutter in a way she wasn't ready to name. As Mrs. Bennet guided her deeper into the house, Sarah glanced back. James was still watching. And for the first time since the Harristons stole her future, Sarah Winters felt something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. The smell of warm stew and fresh bread wrapped around Sarah like a blanket as Mrs. Bennet guided her through the bright kitchen. The heat from the stove thawed the cold from her fingers, and for a moment she simply stood there, letting the warmth seep into her bones. It felt unreal to be inside a place so full of comfort after standing on that bitter station platform for hours. "Sit, dear," Mrs. Bennet said, nudging her gently toward a cushioned chair. "You look like the wind could carry you away." Sarah sank into the chair. Her legs trembled from exhaustion she hadn't even realized she was holding. A bowl of hearty stew appeared in front of her, steam curling up into the air, smelling of beef, onion, and herbs. "You saved me," Sarah whispered before she could stop herself. Mrs. Bennet smiled kindly. "No, child. Sometimes life puts the right people in our path exactly when we need them." Before Sarah could answer, footsteps approached the doorway. James entered, now without his heavy coat. He looked more at ease, but his eyes still held careful watchfulness. "Feeling warmer?" he asked. "Yes, thank you," Sarah replied quietly. He nodded as if satisfied, then took the chair across from her. He didn't speak right away. He just watched her, as though he wanted to make sure she truly was all right. Sarah couldn't remember the last time someone looked at her with concern, rather than judgment or indifference. After she finished the last bite of stew, Mrs. Bennet took the bowl. "Come," she said, "I'll show you to your room." They walked through hallways lined with polished wood and soft rugs. Everything felt warm and lived in a home built with care. The housekeeper led her upstairs and stopped before a door painted a soft shade of blue. "This is the Blue Room," Mrs. Bennet said with pride. "Our best guest room. James asked me to prepare it specially." Sarah blinked in surprise. "He did?" "Oh, yes. That man may be quiet, but he has a heart as wide as these prairies. Now let's get you settled." Inside, the room was beautiful. A four-poster bed stood beneath a white quilt, fluffy and inviting. A fire burned gently in the small hearth, making the room glow with soft orange light. A writing desk sat near a bay window that looked out over the snowy fields. Sarah felt her breath catch. She had never stayed anywhere so lovely. "Rest now," Mrs. Bennet said softly. "Tomorrow will look brighter." When the housekeeper left, Sarah sat on the bed, her hands trembling again, but this time from emotion instead of cold. She changed into the soft nightgown laid out for her and slipped beneath the warm blankets. Her mind swirled with everything that had happened. James, Montgomery, Silver Creek Ranch. Warmth. Safety. A chance she'd never expected. As sleep pulled her under, she whispered a single thought. "Maybe this is where I'm meant to be." Dash, 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 dash. Morning sunlight spilled into the blue room like a golden flood. Sarah woke slowly, blinking at the brightness. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the station, the storm, the carriage, the kindness. her new beginning. She dressed in the clean, lone dress left for her, brushing her hair until it lay in soft waves. When she looked in the small mirror, she barely recognized herself. Rest had changed her face, softened the lines of fear, lifted the weight of disappointment. A gentle knock came at the door. "Breakfast is ready, Miss Winters," Mrs. Bennet called. Sarah stepped into the hallway, and together they walked to the morning room. The sun poured through the east-facing windows, and the scent of coffee filled the air. James sat at the table reading some letters, but he stood the moment she entered. "Good morning, Sarah," he said, offering her the chair beside him. Her heart fluttered unexpectedly at the sound of her name in his voice. "Good morning." She poured herself coffee while James watched her with quiet interest. "I hope the room was comfortable," he said. "It was perfect, more than I could ever have hoped for." He smiled, slow and genuine. "I'm glad." After breakfast, he spread a map across the table, a hand-drawn layout of the ranch. Words, numbers, and markings covered it in careful ink strokes. "I'd like to show you something," he said. He pointed to a place near the northern fields. "This is the boundary the Harristons have been trying to shift. Their behavior is dangerous, and they've hurt others before. You deserved better than what they did to you, Sarah." She swallowed hard. Hearing someone defend her after months of being treated as a burden felt like a balm on her heart. He looked up, meeting her gaze fully. "And if you're willing, I'd like to help you find your place here, truly find it." "What do you mean?" she asked softly. "The town needs a teacher," he said. "The ranch needs help with bookkeeping. The people here, they'd welcome someone like you." A warmth spread through her chest. "You're offering me a home," she whispered. "A home, a purpose," he said. "And time to decide what you truly want from life." Sarah's eyes stung with sudden emotion. She turned away for a moment to steady herself. She had dreamed of a life where she was needed, respected, welcomed. Now, maybe that dream was within reach. Just then, heavy bootsteps sounded outside. Pete, the foreman, appeared in the doorway, tipping his hat to her. "Boss," he said to James, "the fence line on the north pasture looks tampered with." Again. James's jaw tightened. He shot an apologetic glance at Sarah. "I need to go." "Go," she said, standing. "I'll be fine." He hesitated, then touched his hat and followed Pete out the door. But before he left the room completely, he turned back. "Sarah, I'm glad you're here." She felt her breath catch. "So am I." Quote. That afternoon, while examining the ranch's ledgers in James's study, Sarah began noticing patterns, spending habits, supply inefficiencies, missing organization. She realized she could help more than she'd believed. She could prove her worth. She worked for hours, absorbed in numbers, until she heard hoofbeats outside. She hurried to the window. James was dismounting, but he wasn't alone. Other riders approached behind him. Concern carved his features. He entered the study quickly. "Sarah, the Harristons are trying something new, and this time it may pull us into a conflict they won't walk away from." She met his gaze without fear. "Then we'll face it," she said. "Together." For the first time since she'd arrived, James wore a look she couldn't quite name, halfway between relief and admiration. Maybe even something deeper. The wind carried the smell of snow as Sarah stepped onto the porch, pulling her borrowed coat tighter. The sky above Silver Creek Ranch looked heavy, gray, and troubled, as if it sensed something was coming. She watched James and Pete talking near the barn, both men wearing the same serious look. Ranch hands gathered around them, waiting for orders. Sarah's heart tightened. She had only been here a short time, yet she already felt connected to this place in a way she never expected. The ranch wasn't just land. It was people, a community, a second chance. And now danger was circling it like a hungry wolf. James spotted her and walked toward the porch, snow crunching beneath his boots. He took the steps in 2 strides and stopped beside her, his breath visible in the cold air. "You should stay inside," he said gently. "It might get rough before this settles." Sarah shook her head. "I'm not hiding. If the Harristons are starting trouble again, I want to help." James's eyes softened with something warm. Respect, gratitude, something else she wasn't ready to name. "You already have," he said. "Those records you organized, they might be what saves us." Before she could answer, a rider came flying down the road toward the ranch. Tom, the young man who handled the horses, pulled his lathered mare to a stop. "Mr. Montgomery, they're moving cattle again, heading toward Potter's Gap, and they've got rifles this time." The air seemed to freeze around them. James turned to Pete. "Get the men ready. We leave in 5 minutes." Tom looked at Sarah, worry clear in his face. "Miss Winters, you should stay with Mrs. Bennett. It might get dangerous." Sarah squared her shoulders. "Then I'll stay busy. I'll make sure everything here is prepared for whatever comes next." James gave her a thankful nod, then mounted his horse. Just before he rode out, he said quietly, "Stay safe. I mean it." And then he was gone, disappearing with the others into the rising wind. Dash, 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 dash. Inside the house, shadows flickered in the warm kitchen light. Mrs. Bennett handed Sarah a cup of strong coffee. "They'll be all right," she said firmly, though her hand trembled. "James knows this land better than anyone alive." Sarah nodded, but her stomach twisted. She sat at the kitchen table and opened the ledgers again, forcing her mind to focus. If she couldn't ride out with them, she would make herself useful in every other way. She cross-checked past entries, marked suspicious patterns, and prepared everything the marshal might need if the conflict reached legal ground. Hours passed. Snow began to fall. And still, no sign of the men. Sarah stood from the table, unable to think straight anymore. She walked to the window for the 100th time, her breath fogging the glass. The wind howled across the pasture, bending the tall pines. The horses in the nearby corral paced nervously. Her heart felt frozen. What if something went wrong? What if the Harristons planned more than cattle theft? What if James? Hoofbeats. Sarah's breath caught as several riders appeared through the snow. She rushed outside before Mrs. Bennett could stop her. James rode at the front, his coat dusted with frost. Relief washed over her so hard her knees almost gave out. "You're safe," she breathed. He swung down from his horse, his expression tight with frustration. "We stopped them for now, but they're pushing hard, harder than ever." Pete rode up beside him. "Marshal Davies is on his way, but the Harristons are planning to make their claims look real. They've cut fences, altered brands. They even blocked the lower creek." Sarah felt a spark of anger. They can't just take what isn't theirs. James exhaled, running a hand through his cold, stiffened hair. "They're desperate, and desperate men make reckless choices." "Then we'll fight back," Sarah said, "with proof, with reason, with everything we've got." He looked at her, something fierce and proud burning in his eyes. "We will," he said softly, "together." The next morning, the storm began to lift. A pale sunrise pushed through the clouds as Marshal Davies arrived, tall and stern with a gray mustache and eyes that missed nothing. He dismounted in front of the ranch house. "Morning, Montgomery," he said. "I hear we've got a mess on our hands." "That's putting it mildly," James replied. Sarah stepped forward, holding the binder she'd created from the ranch records. "Marshal," she said, "I've organized all the logs, water rights documents, fence maps, and work records for the past month. Everything you'll need to see the truth." The marshal raised his brows. "Well now, looks like someone here knows how to prepare a case." James's lips curved faintly. "She's saved this ranch more than once already." The marshal took the binder and flipped through it, impressed. "This is fine work, Miss Winters. Fine enough that the Harristons might finally have to answer for what they've done." He closed it with a snap. "But I need to see the northern boundary myself." James nodded. "We'll show you." Sarah stepped forward suddenly. "I'm coming too." Both men stared at her. James started to protest. "Sarah." "No," she said firmly. "I helped build this case. I'm not hiding from the people who tried to ruin me." James looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "Stay close to me." The ride to the north pasture was cold and silent, except for the wind brushing over the snow. When they reached the ridge, the damage was immediately clear. cut fences, poison troughs, cattle with mangled brands. The marshal rode along the line, his jaw tightening. This is enough evidence to charge them with fraud, destruction of property, and attempted theft. Sarah let out a slow breath. Justice. Finally. But as the marshal turned to speak again, rifle shots cracked through the air. One bullet hit the snow inches from Sarah's boot. James grabbed her arm, pulling her behind him. Down! Men on horseback appeared on the ridge. Harriston men, faces hard, guns raised. Pete shouted, "Get back! They're trying to scare us off!" The marshal raised his badge. "Drop your weapons! Now!" For a tense moment, no one moved. Then one rider cursed loudly. "We ain't done yet, Montgomery. This land should have been ours." Another shot rang out, this time into the air, and the Harriston riders turned and galloped away. Sarah exhaled shakily as James helped her to her feet, his hands steady on her arms. "You all right?" he asked softly. "Yes," she whispered. "Just shaken." Quote. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle despite the tension. "I won't let them hurt you, ever!" Her heart thudded hard in her chest. Dash, 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 dash. By the time they returned to the ranch, the marshal had enough evidence to shut down the Harriston claims completely. He pulled James aside. "We'll arrest them by sundown," he said. "Thanks to your schoolteacher here." James turned to look at Sarah, his expression filled with something warm and deep. That night, as the ranch hands celebrated the end of weeks of threats and fear, Sarah slipped outside to breathe in the cold night air. Snow glowed softly beneath the moonlight. James found her there, standing by the fence line. "You saved Silver Creek," he said simply. "No," she said, turning toward him. "Silver Creek saved me." He stepped closer. "Sarah, I don't know what I expected the night I found you at that station, but I didn't expect this." "I didn't expect you." Her breath caught. "I thought I was rescuing you," he said quietly, "but instead, you brought light back into this place, back into my life." Quote. She swallowed hard. "James." He took her hands in his, rough and warm and steady. "You belong here," he said, "not because you needed a home, but because this is yours now, if you want it." The world felt still, as if the snow, the stars, the ranch itself were waiting. Then Sarah stepped closer. "I want it," she whispered. "I want all of it, and I want you." James exhaled deeply, as if those words unlocked something inside him. He cupped her face, gently, reverently, and under the quiet winter sky, their first kiss was warm where the world was cold, tender where the world had been harsh, full of promise where life had once given her none. For the first time in her life, Sarah Winters felt truly, completely home.